Distinguished guests, I would like to welcome you to T20 launch event organized by TEPAV and CG. First, I would like to give the floor on behalf of our host, Boğaziçi University, to Professor Şevket Pamuk to address his opening remarks.
Distinguished members of the T20 group, good morning and welcome to Boğaziçi, or Bosphorus University. I'm Şevket Pamuk. I'm the director of the Atatürk Institute for Modern Turkish History at this university and one of your hosts today. Our rector, Professor Gülay Barbarosoğlu, has come down with the flu, and she very much regrets she is unable to deliver these welcoming remarks herself. On her behalf, let me say we are a leading public university in Turkey with historical roots in the 19th century. Only 2 years ago, we celebrated our 150th anniversary on this campus. This big room was the library reading room, and this building was built early in the 20th century. At Boğaziçi University, we are especially proud of our record in research and our connections with universities and research institutions across the globe. For this reason, it is a special pleasure for us to welcome the Think20 group to our campus today. The group of 20 has emerged as the principal forum for intergovernmental economic cooperation since the beginning of the global crisis. We are well aware that the Think20 group serves as an ideas bank for the G20. It is a privilege for us to be hosting this important meeting of the high-level experts from leading think tanks around the world. I know your sessions today will produce ideas and provide analytical depth to the ongoing discussions in the G20 working groups, minister committees, and leaders' summit, and will deliver concrete policy options to them. I'm also aware that your panel discussions today will serve as a vantage point for subsequent Think20 thematic meetings during the rest of this year. As the director of the Atatürk Institute for Modern Turkish History, let me add that that the Atatürk Institute, we are honored to be part of this very special meeting. Personally, it's a pleasure to meet so many distinguished colleagues and some old friends in your group. I look forward to a day of stimulating discussion, and I wish you a productive and pleasant day on our campus. As far as the logistics, there will be tea, coffee, and some fruits, dried fruits, all day at the back. For lunch, we will go out of this building and walk about 50 yards across this big square, and dinner will also be on this campus within walking distance. As you know, the Economic Policy Research Foundation of Turkey, TEPAV, will be one of the co-leaders of your group during Turkey's G20 presidency this year. So now I would like to invite my good friend Güven Sak, director of TEPAV, to say a few words. Welcome again.
Thank you very much. Let me also welcome you. We are now starting our casual discussion today, and tomorrow we are going to have this more official opening, inaugural thing for the T20 2015, basically. Let me first thank Şevket Pamuk and Boğaziçi University, including the Atatürk Institute, for hosting us today in this historic building. This was the building that was established as the library, I think, Şevket, when Boğaziçi University was not yet the university, but was only Robert College at the time, at the beginning of the century. So I thought that this might be a good atmosphere for us to start our discussion this year. We had a very good, not a very good, but it's going to improve, a conversation that's now starting with the official G20 line, because I think this year we are trying to make a difference and increase this interaction with the official line, which is, I think, important for us, for T20 also, to take more shape in the discussions. And I think things are moving, although at this stage with baby steps, we are now walking in the right direction as far as I see. So hopefully we are going to have more to come regarding that. I have to thank our friends from CG2 regarding the organization of this event. Domenico helped us a lot for bringing a program together, basically. They started the process in when the Mexican thing has started, Andres. So I don't know the program very well. The youngsters prepared all these things. So it might be useful for Ussal to tell us what we are going to do today and tomorrow, basically. And maybe just tell us a little bit more about for the events for the whole year, because we are also planning some thematic workshop meetings all around the year. Because this year we thought that it might also be useful to focus on specific themes. So that, not only one think tank from each country can participate, but the ones who knows about these things, wherever they are, not only from the G20 countries, wherever they are, can contribute also to the T20 process. Hadi Usta. Tell us what we are going to do now.
Well, thank you very much for calling me.
He made us sit like this. This is the troika they told. One is from China, this one is from Australia, and I got to sit.
And Andres is the permanent member of Troika, as we call it, and Domenico is our co-organizer. Well, thanks again for calling me a youngster still. So, welcome everyone. My name is Ussal Şahbaz, and I'm coordinating the G20 studies at TEPAV. Let me tell you briefly today's schedule, tomorrow's schedule, and the year's schedule. But before that, let me start with briefly summarizing who is here. We have 86 participants. More than 50 of them are not from Turkey. They represent 20 countries. Not all G20 countries are here, but we have also some guest countries. And they represent 49 institutions. So we have a quite large set of people. I think it's also the advantage of the location, that it's easy to get and it's an interesting place. So we are honored to have you here. And we are looking forward to fruitful discussions today. So today's schedule is actually, today we will discuss the core subjects. We'll start with macroeconomic cooperation, and it will be framed after this additional 2% growth target. Then we'll have lunch. Then the next session will be on trade and investment. We have very good speakers there. The following session will be on infrastructure. Then we'll have a short coffee break. Then we'll have a session on development agenda. And then the last session will be on technology and innovation. So up until this session, we focus on the current issues of G20. On the technology and innovation session, we plan to focus on the future of G20. So we plan to discuss issues that are not on the G20 agenda yet, but are likely to constitute the agenda in the next 5 years or so. And the last session will be a wrap-up session. What have we learned today? And then we'll go to dinner. tomorrow we'll start with a public event. Tomorrow will be in a different venue in the Old Town. We'll start with a public event in which Deputy Prime Minister Babacan will speak. Most of you have met him today in the breakfast. And then we'll have a panel, a public panel, right before the lunch. In the afternoon tomorrow, we are going to discuss the next steps for the year. There will be 2 sessions. The first session will aim to discuss the institutional structure of T20, because T20 has an evolving structure, and you know, we think that we can institutionalize it more, make it a stronger network, and possibly turning it into a more formal bank of ideas for G20 leaders. So far, what I understand is, I'm also new in this process, but what I understand is they always turn to OECD, World Bank, and IMF for new ideas. But I'm not sure to what extent those institutions can come up with new ideas. They are generally bringing the ideas that are on their own agenda. I think think tanks are better situated. Some of the... So we can cooperate with them on, working on new ideas, and this will be the subject of the first session. The second session will be more practical. We want to focus on joint paper ideas that we can produce this year. So far, especially in the last term in the Australian cycle, Lovi produced a lot of strong documents, collected papers, but most papers were written by individuals or people from the same institution. What we want to try this year is to have co-authors from different institutions, different countries, to have a better pollination of ideas. So this is today's and tomorrow's outline. What we'll do in the next months forward, we have a big target to have a larger event in Bodrum in June 15 to 17. This will be next to the Sherpas and Deputies meeting, which will happen on the same dates. Yes. We may double check with Mustafa Bey whether we still have the same dates. That's good. That meeting will be the final meeting that we are going to submit our papers. But towards that meeting, we will have a few deadlines. What we want to do is to put these papers, even at draft stage, to the agendas of the working groups and Sherpas meeting. So we will ask the papers much earlier than the June, at least the drafts of the papers much earlier than the June event. So the Sherpas meeting will be on March 26th, and the development working group, next one, will be on April 9th. So we will set the deadlines accordingly and look for your inputs. This is the main line of the papers. We will also have some thematic and regional workshops. One of them will be in Ottawa, again together with CG. We have set the date. We even sent the save the dates yesterday. It will be on financial regulation on May 5th. Right? 4th and 5th, okay. Very good speakers are already on the schedule. We'll have an event with Brookings. TEPAV and Brookings will have an event on April 16th or 17th in Washington, D.C. We are planning a seminar on SMEs and innovation together with EPF in May, in the second half of May. We are about to set the date yet. There will be an energy governance workshop in China together with Shanghai Institute and a number of other institutions, including CG and Lovi, on July 23rd and 24th. And we'll have another workshop on global governance in Beijing right after that. So these are the ones that we know already, but we are discussing a few others, and we are open to ideas on co-organizing events in different parts of the world. What else? We also plan to organize small events next to the ministerial meetings. As Deputy Prime Minister Babacan said in the morning, there will be agriculture ministers and energy ministers meetings. Agriculture ministers in May and energy ministers in September. So it is possible to organize events that will, feed the agenda of these ministerial meetings as well. The last thing that I want to emphasize is this year we also have a close interaction with the other engagement groups, in particular B20, because we are also providing content support to B20. So on their task forces, we can also, publish papers that are focusing on the future of those areas, because B20 has since its business, they have a very short-sighted view, I would say. They are focusing on the issues today. Even this year, they are not even thinking about the next year. And what we can do is to think about their future as well and contribute to their, dialogue with the G20 leaders. And their task forces are trade, employment, SMEs and entrepreneurship, which is introduced this year, finance, and anti-corruption. So these are also issues that we can, keep a dialogue with B20. So this is more or less the schedule for today and the next of the year. And now we are proceeding with Domenico, our co-organizer.
Okay. Thank you, Sal. Thank you, Guven. I hope you were including me when you were referring to the youngsters. Not so sure. But anyway, it's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much to TEPAV. It's really been wonderful to working with you, Guven, and your staff. So let me kick off the first session of the program. So this first session is going to be on challenges of global governance. And I thought I would share with you a few words as a way of introducing the session. We're going to have representatives from the Troika, from the Lowy Institute, Tristram Sainsbury, of course, Guven Sak, the Executive Director of TEPAV, Wei Yuan from CAS, and as you know, China is going to chair the G20 next year. And then Andres Rosenthal, who has several hats. First of all, he's a former Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, and therefore he had a key role in the Mexican presidency of the G20. But he's also my boss in a way. He's a CG board member, and he's of course founder and one of the former presidents of COMEXI. In terms of the issues that I'd like to lay down as a way of introducing the panel, I would say that when we speak about challenges in global governance, and with a particular focus on the G20, actually those challenges are twofold. I would say there are some agenda-related challenges. We have seen that the G20 has been tackling a number of issues, from the reform of the international financial architecture with mixed success, to most recently financial regulation. But there are also issues on which the G20 has not really been forceful, at least so far, and maybe the panel is going to shed light on that. First of all, with all the talks on trade, on jobs and growth, we see that trade has not really been at the forefront of the G20 agenda. Climate change is also one of those issues where the G20 has not been really focusing on, at least so far. Was referring this morning in a breakfast with the G20 ministers and governors. Also, the sovereign debt architecture has been one of the issues where the G20 has not really been forceful or focusing a lot of its attention. And there is then a challenge in terms of the trade-offs between breadth and depth of the agenda. Clearly, on the one hand, you want to cover as many things as you can, but at the same time, this might have a cost in terms of the breadth of the conversation and possibly the outcomes you are going to observe. So this is a challenge that I think each chair of the G20 has been facing so far, and it's going to be interesting to hear from the panelists their thoughts. And then there are some process-related challenges. The first one is, of course, inclusiveness. And again, this is one of the pillars of the Turkish presidency, it's one of the eyes. And the G20 is a forum for systemically important economies, But after all, there are only 19 economies or countries represented in the G20. There is a relationship with a treaty-based organization. The G20 works with a number of them, but clearly doesn't have the legitimacy of those organizations. And then there is, I would say, an organizational challenge as the G20 becomes more institutionalized. There is a greater proliferation of working groups, committees, processes. So how do you manage, on the one hand, dialogue, consultations, and then how you make sure that you feed the outcome of those consultations into the decision-making process of the leaders. So I would say these are broadly the issues, at least seen from our CG angle. And I would now give the floor. We have, this is a short session, so I would ask the panelists to limit their opening remarks to 7 minutes at most. And I will start with Tristan.
Sounds good. Right, thanks very much, Domenico. And firstly, I'd like to say thanks to Guven, to Usul, to Farid, and to all their colleagues in TEPAV, and to Barry Karen as well for the excellent organisation and for getting all this up and running. So I've been asked to provide some context setting. So I think the easiest way, I'll just touch on 5 key points. So the first point is about the economic backdrop for 2015. The session that follows this one, I think, will go into a lot more depth on these issues, so I'm just going to touch on them here. But the way I'd characterise the overarching global economic environment now is a similar one to actually the one that faced the Australian presidency as it was taking up the reins of 2014. That is sluggish, uneven growth and mounting risks. The global growth is forecast to slow again. Anyone who's been following IMF forecasts over the last 3 years will find this as no surprise. The close to 60% fall in oil prices may be an overall gain for the globe, but it's going to have distributional challenges which are acute for a few G20 members. Greek debt, European stability are of interest again amid deflation fears in the continent. Half of the G20 central banks have eased their monetary policy stances since January. And there are again risks of substantial economic disruptions from future monetary policy changes globally. There are rising geopolitical risks as well to round out the picture from Ukraine and the Middle East. One perennial question which will always be here is whether a short-term crisis will actually become all-consuming for the G20 and whether it will overwhelm the forum's capacity to advance longer-term plans. The second point is we're coming off a relatively successful Australian presidency. 2014 marked a year where the G20 did what it actually said it would be doing. It made boosting jobs, growth, resilience its core narrative, dragging the G20 into a new second phase that looks beyond a crisis response and towards boosting sustained growth in countries that are still recovering from the crisis. There was the G20's first 5-year plan centred on the more than 2% target, which is achievable if through some 1,000 collective commitments, and most of them were actually new as well. The IMF and OECD, the reason we have that confidence is the IMF and OECD ran their custom-built modelling exercise and came out with a tick of success. The G20 also made a strong commitment to boost female participation, welcomed the US-India deal on trade that resuscitated the multilateral agenda, and saw a substantive advance on energy governance negotiations, amongst others. On top of that, Australia actually got the process in line. There were time limits on speeches, better improvised discussion, which has replaced the rather distressing habit of set pieces, and improved habits of cooperation. All of this makes the diplomacy of the forum, I think, a success. And it's something that the Australian presidency actually seemed to actually intuitively grasp better than other hosts have. In all, I think we can say that Australia has managed to get the G20 back on track. The key, though, and I put a large caveat on this, is in the implementation. All major Australian achievements need to be consolidated on in future years. G20 credibility will take a hit if it can't actually achieve the 2% target in particular, given how central a focus it is. And there is little sense to date, even though the custom-built modelling has come out with a 2% tick, that the international organisations yet believe that the measures will have an impact. And I say that because we are now 15 months into the 5-year plan, and the modelling of and the forecasts, the IMF WEOs, the OECD economic forecasts, they still haven't shown any sign of the measures actually having a GDP impact. Now, there are similar challenges in a lot of other parts of the agenda as well. Climate change, IMF reform, the 4-year global infrastructure hub that there still isn't a lot of information about, the future of tax, financial regulation, trade. I could go on, but I think the point that you need to get is that the G20 faces ongoing questions of relevance. So as a result of all these policies, Australia hasn't actually been able to banish the overriding sense that the G20 has been in decline in recent years, despite its success. The world has become used to lower and slower levels of achievement from the G20 as a forum, and frustration on the progress of key initiatives, such as those in IMF reform and trade, are easy fodder for critics. The delays in longer term have been used publicly as motivations behind the development of alternative architecture, such as the BRICS Bank and Currency Pool and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It has also seen the increasing prominence of blocs and factions, the G7, BRICS countries, and now MICTA. These blocs can represent a threat to consensus building and therefore the overall effectiveness of the G20. The best thing that the G20 can do to try and address these issues is demonstrate results, and it needs to be under this pressure to do it continually. We live in a world of workarounds, and if the G20 cannot demonstrate its relevance, other forum will continue to be pursued. So this is why I think Turkey's hosting comes at a particularly important time. But I'd say that Turkey's presidency is off to a shaky start. In the space of the first 2 weeks of narrative building, it detailed 7 priority areas, a promise to continue the existing multi-year items, 11 work streams divided into 3 themes, and on top of that, that's where we get the 3 I's as well. What we haven't seen is a sense of the specific outcomes they consider indispensable and what they'll stake their reputations on achieving. And it's generally been the case that less successful presidencies have expanded the rhetorical scope of the agenda. What is needed, I think, is greater prioritisation. And if it's to restore the reputation of the G20, Turkey can't focus on implementation and domestic areas of focus only. It really needs to be working on global governance issues. And these are the ones that require countries to come together to actually solve things collectively. So the final point I'll make is this is where the T20 comes in. As think tanks in the academy, the G20, our role is to provide ideas, analysis and commentary. We're interested in quality public policy, and we are the only engagement group that actually advocates for global governance issues. We can also take a longer term vision. I quite liked and agreed with Guven's points that he made this morning about the need to look beyond 2015 to look into 2016 and the Chinese presidency and 2017 and beyond. So our focus needs to be structured, I think, along 3 areas. What we can recommend within the existing Turkish presidency's agenda and how we can constructively engage in the public debate. What we can suggest for the research agenda for international organisations that will then feed into future G20 commitments. And how can we contribute to the Chinese agenda, including material that needs to be in the Antalya summit. I, for one, will be most interested in hearing your views on these priorities over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So now over to Mulsak, the Executive Director of TEPAV.
Let me speak from here. Regarding international governance, Domenico asked a good question. Let me start from there. He asked why G20 is not yet forceful enough to focus on areas and find solutions, basically. First of all, regarding international governance, I think the mere presence of G20 means that we have a problem with the international governance structure. Paul Martin was speaking of this when we met last time in Istanbul, in November or December, in October. Secondly, I think G20 worked. You know, we have a saying in Turkish. It says that the tongue goes to the aching tooth. You know, the troubled places in your mouth. So we had a problem with the international system. Basically, it wasn't functioning at the time, and G20 worked for that purpose. The problem was with the developed countries at the time. Now is the time, I think, to focus and make G20 work for the developing countries' problems. We have age-old problems, and it is good that in this transition period now, we have the Turkish presidency to focus on this issue, and then we have the Chinese presidency to bring these issues to the fore, basically. And I think in order to make G20 forceful, we have to increase the broadband, because now, up until now, it is kind of a closed network of government officials, you know, in some ministries, in fact. Not all the ministers themselves. In some ministries, there are a close group of government officials. They are not even talking a lot with the embassies, etc. They are doing things among themselves, basically. So what is important is to increase the broadband, to open new communication channels, and that's where the outreach groups are very much important. So that's what we need to do, I think. And there, T20 really can play a role, and I think during these discussions, today and tomorrow afternoon, we have to underline how we can make T20 more effective. I think if we can make T20 more effective, we can make also at the same time G20 more effective. Because, you know, we are think tanks. We used to do second track things. We used to work with our governments also. We are used to working with our governments at the same time. So we can set the agendas both for today and also for the future agendas. So we try to shape those agendas. So I believe that in order to make G20 more effective, we first have to turn T20 into a more effective device with this in mind. We have to increase this broadband, opening new communication channels between the governments. I think that's what we need to do. So let me stop here.
Thank you very much, Guven. And now I'm going to give the floor to Wei Yuan from CAS.
I just said
it's more comfortable.
Yes. Okay. My speech will consist of 3 parts. The first one is I will do a brief introduction about my institute. IWEP, Institute of World Economics and Politics, actually is an institute under the CAS. But we have 130 full-time staff work on world economy and political issues. And we have a lot of, we provide a lot of research support for the government. So the second part is about 2016. I think everybody cares about it. And nowadays, our institute and Shanghai Institute for International Studies, two of these institutes prepare for the next T20. But frankly, we are not get official denomination so far. But in last December, we already attended a preparation conference hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we discussed about the next year's G20 issues. And besides, we also work on the 2016's agenda, because that's very important. But so far, we don't have a concrete, a detailed picture for that. So we still work on that. That's why I think it's very important for me on this meeting. The third part is about, the same thing. Besides, I think I want to clarify the T20's roles. I think that could be very important because we need to know what we want to do. The first thing I think the T20 should be, we need to provide support for next chair countries because everybody knows that the priorities, priority topics and agenda should be designed in the last half of the former year. So it's very hard to make decision for, provide support information for this year. So that's why I think I deeply appreciate about the Turkey's, especially the TEPAV's job. And the second one, I think, is that we need to, we need to make a lot of contribution advertisement because we need to let the other people, not just the government, to know what's going on the G20 platform. That's very important. So that's our scholars' mission, that's our responsibility. And the third one, of course, is try to improve the communication between scholars, for example, G20 issues, because we need to exchange our views, our desired future for the government. That's very important because scholars normally they have a more independent views on the future, not just from their own countries. Okay, I think besides that, I think I want to mention about some principles about why on T20. That's what I think. The first one is that I think we need to have a comprehensive view on the agenda or the topic design. Because we need to have our so-called short-term, middle-term, and long-term topics, and we need to let them work together, not just talk about one topic independently. That's not an efficiency way. And the second one is that we also need to have our coordinate the advanced countries and developing countries requirement. So we need a comprehensive analyze framework. And the second one is that we need to have a coherent. It means that a topic should be continued, or I should say, we need to follow the formal discussion, not just break and give something that's not. Is very hard to realize. And secondly, is that we need to have a cooperation between external policies and domestic policies as well. Every country needs to notice that. Otherwise, our discussion or our agreement could never be fulfilled. That's a tragedy for G20. And the third one is that diversity. Everybody knows that this word is, we come from different countries. We have different background on culture and history and on value, value options. So that's why I think we need to respect each other. And that's why I think when we discuss about each topic, we need to care about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I would give the floor to Ambassador Rosenthal of Mexico.
Thank you, Domenico, and many thanks, Guven, for organizing this meeting and all the other meetings that we're going to have and that we've had. When Usal was talking about new ideas from the institutions he mentioned, World Bank, Fund, OECD, I kept thinking that they sounded like old institutions. And I wonder how many new ideas can come out of old institutions. And I think this is one of the problems of our global governance challenge. And for me, the biggest challenge, and we've now been in the Think 20 process since the Mexican presidency, through the Russian, Australian, now Turkish, is to make sure that those who govern understand that they need to make decisions which are relevant to global problems. And my own feeling is that we don't always get there. The G20 at the leaders level started out as a crisis-related initiative to deal with the 2008 financial meltdown. 7 years have passed. The crisis is still with us. If you listen to my countryman, Mr. Gurria, the Secretary General of the OECD, he said earlier in the meeting yesterday, finance ministers, that the crisis will be with us for a long, long time. Does that mean that the G20 has to be dealing with that particular crisis and only that crisis from now on? Or does it mean that because it's a long-lasting crisis, there are other issues on the global agenda that need to be focused on? My feeling is that the G20 will never have the relevance that it deserves unless it actually deals with global issues that are on today's public opinion agenda. As I read the papers that were prepared for this meeting, the 2-pagers of which we had some 20 contributions, I got the impression that almost none of them deal with those particular global problems that people worry about today. And I think our think tanks, yes, we have lots of specialists, we have academicians, we have technocrats, we have intellectuals, but we also have people who have spent a lot of time in politics or in government, certainly my case. And as I go through these papers and I read the technical details about the post-2015 MDGs and the climate change issues and the standstill in protectionism, and even this morning I pick up the Turkish newspaper and it says G20 fails to agree on investment target plans. And I wonder how relevant is all of this to the people outside this room or outside the G20 negotiating table. So I want to leave that with you as a thought to start. Tomorrow we have a second session to talk about the challenges of global governance, and I'll be a little bit more specific tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. So I think we are running a little bit late, but I've been advised by my super chair to my left that we can, we have time for grouping, a few questions or remarks, comments from the audience, and I wonder whether there is anybody who wanna break the ice. So we have, yes, this gentleman on the first row, and then we have another participant on the third row. And can you please be short in your comments?
Short. Hello, my name is Nikola Ivanovic. I come from the Center of International Relations and Sustainable Development based in Belgrade and New York. I would like just to mention one thing. In 2015, we have 3 extremely relevant files, global files. One is, of course, the adoption of the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, it's up to us to make them as concrete and as relevant as possible. So it's up to us. It's not destined to fail. Then we have a climate talks, the relevance of which we shouldn't stress enough. If we wake up in some cities in the world in smog and dust, of course, it's extremely relevant. And then we have financing for development, which will take place in Addis Ababa this year. So my point is, those 3 processes happen under auspices of the United Nations. One of the ways to strengthen the relevance of the G20 is to strengthen the cooperation between the UN and the G20. And in 2013, there was a resolution in the General Assembly. My think tank was at that time in New York in the General Assembly, which basically calls for strengthening of cooperation between the UN and G20. And I think we should build on that and use that instead of speaking in vain.
Thank you. So I have one, and then we have Elena. Okay. Ladies first. So.
Thank you and good morning. Just a very quick comment or question. I'm Elena Lazaro from the Getúlio Vargas Foundation in Brazil. I think just two points I'd like to make in relevant to global governance, which is the issue of this panel and which I think should be addressed during the day, today and tomorrow. We live in a world of a sort of spaghetti bowl of global institutions, and all of them keep increasing their agendas. And I think what the T20 should focus on is how to give the G20 very specific mandate, how to make it about important, as Andres said, but very specific issues so that they can make a difference and be perceived as such. It's the only way to avoid what is perceived as the decline of G20. And the second thing, I think a very important asset of the G20 is that it brings together so-called emerging powers and established powers, so how that can be used as the difference to be made, I think would be an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have this participant on the first row.
Thank you, Antonio Villafranca from ISPI Milan. Well, last year when we met in Sydney, we discussed on what T20 should cover and the way it should also, of course, submit proposals to G20. And, I have the feeling that what has been done so far is good in terms, for instance, of the 2% targets, in terms of 1,000 initiatives which have been at least announced by the government. But my feeling is that 1,000 initiatives is just a collection of what states would have done in any case, okay? I read some of them, and that is a strong feeling I have. So the point is different, and I think this could be one of the aims of T20. Well, let's define what are the real global goods that G20 countries should provide. Let's try to prioritize those global goods, global public goods, in terms of stability of the international market, in terms of reduction of imbalances. Let's try to identify what are the priorities, because these should be issues that each country should be able to do. And just to conclude, also when we talk about reform of Bretton Woods institution, we could, turn the debate, including the IMF, upside down. Instead of talking in advance about the voting system, how many votes we should give to China, first define what is today's and tomorrow's contribution of each country to the attainment of those international public goods. And then, depending on this, we can also identify in a very fair way how many votes give to one country or to another country. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have some further comments here on the first row to my right.
This is Gary Huffbauer, Peterson Institute. I have a very mechanical question. Andreas told us that he's seen all the papers. I haven't seen all the papers. I would like to see them. I'd like to see them in hard copies over there. If that was possible, it'd be great.
Good point.
Okay. Yeah, they were sent to all of us. So, but no.
Only 2 chairs of the sessions.
Okay, so only 2. Okay, but we can circulate them. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions or observations? So if not, I think we can wrap up the session. And then thank you very much to the panelists and, of course, to the participants. Thank you.